I'm gonna end with this little sandwich right here. Media coverage and public perception of that 2016 London Council that he was talking about. It was a crucial conference, crucial scientific discovery. It's noted it received limited media coverage, potentially contributing to a disconnect between the scientific community's internal discussions and the public's understanding of evolutionary science. This led to criticisms about a chasm, whatever you want to say, dividing how evolution and its evidence are presented to the public versus how scientists discuss it in their own circles. Atheists, hit me in the comments, let me know. Let me talk about something. Let's get to chatting. Let's get to chatting. All right, how you guys doing today? We're about to hop into a little reaction. The first things first, I just want to make sure y'all like the video. You know what to do. Hit a little exit full screen, scroll just a little bit, like the video, then full screen it back up. You feel me? So I'm pretty sure we're in our 5th location now of the year. This is my transitional housing from my previous job until I get to move into my real assignment, which should be August 13th. So August 13th or 14th, you'll see me in my final location, hopefully for the year. I mean, at least until like, around Christmas time or whatever. But regardless of that fact, today's video is coming from one of our favorites, if not our favorite, Dr. Frank Turek from Cross Examined. Frank Turek unpacks the 4 best arguments against evolution. Now, these necessarily aren't my arguments,
and I think God created Adam out of the dust, just like it says.
Well, maybe they're the best universally, but they're not my favorite.
So
but
yes,
let's check it out.
God
Let's see what
created
he's got
Adam
to
out of
say.
the dust. When that happened, I don't know. What was the other part of the question?
How does creation and evolution play into the Genesis?
Well, first of all, I think macroevolution is false on the merits, not because the Bible. Leave the Bible out of it for a minute. When you look at the evidence for macroevolution, I not only think the evidence is weak for macroevolution, there's very strong evidence against it. Okay? I'll just give you a few real quickly with the acronym LIFE, L-I-F-E. L stands for the fact that there's a limited capacity for change. Like, for example, dog breeders try and breed dogs, right? And they get a dog as small as a Chihuahua and as large as a Great Dane. But even with all their intelligence, they can't break the genus of dogs. Why do we think a non-intelligent process can break that genus, can break those limits? Doesn't make any sense, right? The I stands for irreducible complexity. And
So with the dog thing, I mentioned this. I touched on this a little bit earlier in comments. Oh no, I didn't touch on it in a video, but some dude in the comments was talking about what biologist would say that an extant species evolved into another extant species, and I'd say I don't know any biologist that would say that. Heck, I wouldn't even say that, because if we say an extant species hasn't evolved into an extant species, nobody's gonna say that. Or has evolved into an extant species, no one's gonna say that. However, the premise is that at some point, dolphins and hippos had a common ancestor way back when. So at some point, that thing split off to make both, or one split off to do something else. So one extant species evolved into another extant species. So it doesn't matter if somebody's going to say that about any extant species that's alive today. You have to assume that from the past. And there's a problem with that, because if you're saying, well, they can't do it today, so why are we doing it in the past? Right? And with the dog thing, I brought up the dolphins because I'm also saying I looked up the difference between the bottlenose dolphin and the spinner dolphin, and they have different head shape, a little bit with the skull. They have different amounts of teeth, and I bet if we found a spinner dolphin that died like 100,000 years before the bottlenose dolphin, we may say, well, they just evolved to be their head different a little bit and some more teeth for this and that, let alone that they're now 2 exact dolphins, not exact, but 2 dolphins that are exactly dolphins, just with 2 different functions, with different bone structures, but are still dolphins, still the same genus, species, whatever you want to call it, mammals in that too. But same thing with the dogs, right? They can't really break out of that. Same with dolphins. But anyway, let's keep going.
Michael Behe introduced this back in 1996 with his book Darwin's Black Box, where he points out that there are so many aspects of living things that you can't build gradually, that they're irreducibly complex, that all the pieces and all the parts have to be in place in working order to have any function at all. You can't get there gradually. Like you can't get, Richard Dawkins talked about, well, maybe our eyes were developed through some sort of gradual process where we had at first sort of light-sensitive cells, and then they eventually evolved into an eye. What Dawkins doesn't seem to realize is that light-sensitive cells are irreducibly complex themselves, and that to get to an eye, light-sensitive cells aren't a prerequisite to an eye, and you'd have to have vision the whole way through with all the parts there at the same time. So it doesn't work. The F stands for the fact that
and on irreducible complexity, right? We know that cells and atoms, they're pretty small, right? But we know that neutrons, electrons, they make that up. We know that organelles make up a cell, right? But an organelle on its own isn't going to survive. DNA on its own isn't going to survive. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to code anything, right? That code is just going to exist without, so it's like the cell is the smallest unit, but the cell has smaller units, and you can't really break that down. So how are you going to say these organelles came together to form a cell? Like, they wouldn't be doing anything outside of themselves. The mitochondria got nothing to be the powerhouse of without the cell, right? And even before that, you're chopping down some other stuff irreducible complex way, right? Like just atoms in general or anything, right? How little did it have to be before it was like, you got to break it down a little smaller because it got bigger, right? That thing is still too big. It's got to break down to the quark level. We don't even understand the quark level, let alone strong force and all that junk. But you know what I'm saying? We don't got to touch on that. But even with what he said of the eye thing, right? There was this, I believe it's a Chinese doctor who came to Christ, and just be off the fact that the eye was so complex. He's like, I can't believe that this thing was chance, right? He was a eye surgeon or eye doctor or something like that. And he just came to Christ. I think he's got a documentary out that I've been meaning to watch, but so I like that he brought up the eye, because that's a specific thing that somebody has been brought to Christ by.
fossil record does not comport with macroevolution. It comports with instantaneous creation, because according to their dating, the Cambrian explosion, where most major body phyla or body plans appear, they appear in the geological record about 530 million years ago in a geological instant. It looks more like creation rather than this long series of gradual fossils that we should find if macroevolution were true. This is a great problem for Darwin. He said, if my theory's true, why isn't the geological strata filled with all these intermediate fossils? He said, but don't worry, we'll investigate it and I'll be vindicated. Well, for the past 160 years, we've been investigating the fossil record, and Darwin isn't vindicated. Okay? There are huge gaps in the fossil record. And E stands for something known as epigenetic information. And that is...
And just real quick on the fossil record, I talked about this also in a previous video, where it was like, why isn't there literally in every single intermittent species, right? We should be able to see the exact path that everything changed on from 66 billion years, 65, 64, 63 million, and just on and so forth. Instead of, this is what it looked like 60 years ago, 60 million years ago, and this is what it looked like 120 million years ago. And see all the 60 million year gap that we just have here? Isn't evolution great? Like, I don't believe that. I need the Carfax. Show me the Carfax.
The idea that there's structures in the cell that are required for life and for the cell to function that can't be modified by mutating DNA. And you can't modify epigenetic information by mutating it. In other words, maybe an analogy would be if you have a software program in your computer, say an architecture program, to build a house, you can come up with a plan to build the house, but is the architecture program going to give you the nails, the wood, the lumber, the concrete to build the house? No, the architecture program is like DNA. It's the software. The hardware of a living thing is called epigenetic information, and in order to get a new body plan, you need to modify epigenetic information. The problem is, if you try and modify epigenetic information early on in the embryonic process, the living thing dies. It's lethal. So this is why on November 7th, 2016, in London, the Royal Society called together a meeting, and the premise of the meeting was the Darwinian theory of evolution doesn't work. We need to find a new theory. So they all met there in 2016. They pointed out several problems with neo-Darwinian theory, and they didn't come up with a new theory because there isn't one. Okay? So not only is the evidence for macroevolution weak, in my opinion, there's evidence against it, and I just gave you 4. I could go on. Okay? So I don't think it works. But look, let's suppose macroevolution is true. Does that mean there's no God?
No.
Does that mean Jesus didn't rise from the dead?
No.
No. So even if it's true, it doesn't defeat Christianity. I just don't think it's true based on the merits. And if macroevolution is true, the natural laws that drive it are still created by a lawgiver who created these laws and sustains them. So you're not getting rid of God even if it's true.
So would you say, sorry to keep going, but would you say that just the world probably developed for a few million years and then God just put Adam in just a random set of time?
Well, it wasn't random according to God.
Of course.
I don't know when Adam came into existence. There's all sorts of different theories. William Lane Craig has a theory. He wrote a book called The Historical Adam, which I haven't read yet, so I can't recommend it. I don't know. There's a Four Views book on the historical Adam that's coming out. William Lane Craig is a contributor to it. I just got an email that it's coming out, but I haven't seen it yet because it's not out yet. So there's a lot of different views. And whichever side you come down on, it doesn't defeat Christianity.
Amen.
All right? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And that's really the beauty of it all, right? No matter what you want to say about some level of science process or something here, something there, does it show that Jesus didn't rise from the dead? Did it show that he didn't exist? Did it show he ain't walk on water? Did it show this and that? No. No, it doesn't. He still did all that junk he said he did. And who did he say he did it through the power of? Yahweh? The God of Jacob? The God of David? Of Abraham? Interesting. And then claimed to be that? And then rose from the dead through the power of that? Even if he didn't do evolution. Or even if he did do evolution. This guy's rising from the dead and claiming that he did it through the power of a God. With evolution? Natural law still kicking. Yeah. It's good stuff right there, man. Regardless of what you want to say about it. God's still true. And I would love nothing more than to hear some atheists who support evolution hit down in the comments section. Let me know, right? I keep my mind open as much as it doesn't know any scientific stuff like that, right? I try to keep my mind open and everything. Like irreducible complexity, to me, that makes sense, right? Because like stuff got to start off so small. Like you literally can't get nothing out of something. It doesn't make sense, right? And they may say, oh, we just didn't know what happened before the Big Bang. Come on. I'm gonna end with this little sandwich right here. Media coverage and public perception of that 2016 London Council that he was talking about. It was a crucial conference, crucial scientific discovery. It's noted it received limited media coverage, potentially contributing to a disconnect between the scientific community's internal discussions and the public's understanding of evolutionary science. This led to criticisms about a chasm, whatever you want to say, dividing how evolution and its evidence are presented to the public versus how scientists discuss it in their own circles. So before you say what you want to say, I get flack about this all the time at work, right? I come in with all these hot takes and I'm always the one standing on my opinion and looking like a different type of human, right? But I always ask people, do you know why you believe what you believe? Do you think about what you think about? Or do you just hear something and say, that's gotta be true, right? Do you do that? Like I ask all these people in the comments, I'm like, do you understand evolution? Or do you just hear this thing and say, evolution true because science man said it, right? And if you don't want to say like, well, we can trust the scientists, there was this psychological study, I forget the name of it, I used to be a psych major, right? Arguments from authority, we like to throw those out. Arguments from authority, saying that like you can't argue just because so and so said it and he could be wrong. You're saying it because he's in a popular position and it sounds like he should know what he's talking about, but he doesn't maybe not know what he's talking about, But in that scientific study, people were told, keep shocking that person, keep pressing that thing, keep asking them questions. If they get the question wrong, shock them. And it got to the point where these people were not making noise anymore. They were screaming, help, stop, please don't shock me. I'm not going to answer the question. And the doctor said, man in the white jacket, man in the white lab coat said, shock them. And the people kept shocking them because Dr. Man said so. He said, they're going to be fine. Keep shocking them. They weren't responding anymore. They went from screaming to silence after getting shocked with like 90 volts. Dr. Man said, shock them. These people kept shocking them. A lot of them kept shocking them. It was a very small minority of people. Like, I believe less than 10% of the subjects stopped shocking them. So if you want to talk about an argument from authority, if y'all just listening to science, just to listen to science, I'd implore you, please do something else. Get a bunch of different perspectives. Right? Put in the time and effort, trying to understand why you believe what you believe, right? Question why you believe what you believe. What do you do on a daily basis, right? Like I go to the gym and I work out. I'm looking at stuff like which exercise is essential for this muscle, right? If I'm doing 3 exercise, let's say for my biceps, bicep means 2 heads, right? There's 2 heads. Bi, 2, right? We're bipedal humans. Bicycle, 2 wheels, 2 legs on a human bipedal. Bicep has 2 heads. I'm making sure I'm hitting the long head and the short head when I'm doing a bicep exercise. Do you make sure that you understand what your thoughts lead to? My thoughts on these exercises lead to my gains because I think and I study which exercise hits this, which exercise hits that, where's the proof, where's the boom, and then I do that based on the evidence I have seen and what other people claim to have reported and claim to have seen evidence for, such as those who claimed to believe in Jesus Christ back in the day and died for that claim. Why would they die for something they didn't know was true? Right? That was what started me. Then I started looking at evolution because I'm like, well, this is the main objection. This is all we really got. Right? I don't need to look into Islam. That dismantled itself pretty quickly. And it's even going downhill. I almost reacted to a video about it, but I was like, it's a touchy subject. I don't want to anger the Muslims, right? One of my best friends is Muslim now, so don't even go there. Anyway, atheists, hit me in the comments, you know. Let me know. Let me talk about something. Let's get to chatting. All right, that's gonna be the end of the video. Hope you guys have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. Peace.